Hello and welcome to this video on solving equations. This is the second video on this topic. If you haven't already done so, I recommend that you watch the first video on this topic before you carry on with this one. In this video, we're going to look at equations that involve negative numbers, but also equations that involve more than one step to be able to get to a solution. So let's have a look at an example. So example 1 says solve x plus 9 equals 2. Now in the first video we looked at solving equations by balancing the equation. So to solve an equation we are aiming to get the letter on its own. That's what we're aiming for. And you can see here what's getting in the way of x being on its own. Well, what's getting in the way of it is the plus 9. So how do we get rid of that? We do the opposite operation. We subtract 9. But whatever we do to one side of the equation, we must do to the other. So plus 9 minus 9 cancels out. And now I'm going to do 2 minus 9. And if you think about 2 on the number line and then you subtract 9, it leaves you at minus 7 on the number line. Minus 7. So the solution to that is x is equal to minus 7. Example 2. C minus 5 is equal to minus 8. So again, remember, to solve an equation, we're trying to get the letter on its own. What's in the way of that? It is the minus 5. How do I get rid of the minus 5? Well, I do the opposite of minusing 5. And the opposite of minusing 5 is plussing 5. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So minus 5 and plus 5 is cancelled out. And now I'm going to do the calculation of minus 8 plus 5. So think about minus 8 on your number line. Add 5 and it takes me to minus 3. C is equal to minus 3. Another thing which I pointed out in the first video, which is a good little hint, is to substitute your answer back in. So now that you've got your answer is minus 3, substitute it back into there and see if it's correct. So minus 3 is my C. And then if I minus 5, I get to minus 8. So yes, it's correct. Substitute it back in and it works. Example 3. Well, 2m equals minus 14. Well, 2m means 2 multiplied by m. So if I want m on its own, I need to undo that operation. Well, it's currently times, so to undo a times, I need to divide. So I'm dividing by 2, but whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. What is minus 14 divided by 2 is minus 7. Example 4. Again, I'm aiming for m on its own. This time, m has been multiplied by minus 4. So I want to undo that. So I'm going to divide by minus 4. And whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I'm going to divide 36 by minus 4. Well, 36 divided by 4 is 9. So 36 divided by minus 4 is minus 9. M is equal to minus 9. If you're unsure, you can always substitute it back in. So if m is minus 9, put it back into here and do minus 4 times minus 9, which, yes, a minus multiplied by a minus gives you a plus. So minus 4 multiplied by minus 9 is positive 36. It's correct. Example 5, solve y over 7 is equal to minus 3. Well, this means y divided by 7. is equal to minus 3. So how do I get y on its own? I have to multiply by 7 because that's the opposite operation to divide. Multiply by 7. Whatever I do on one side, I must do to the other. And minus 3 multiplied by 7 is minus 21. Again, if you're unsure, substitute it back in and do minus 21 divided by 7, and yes, it gives you minus 3. Okay, two-step equations now. So example 6 is solve 2x plus 3 is equal to 15. So I like to think about this as a diagram. So I've got my 2x's here. That's 1x, that's another x. Plus 3, 1, 2, 3. Is equal on the other side to 15. And there's 15 little boxes of 1 there. Okay, what do we need to do when we're solving equations? The aim is to get x on its own, okay? So what is stopping me getting one of these little x's on its own? Well, what's stopping me? Well, these little boxes here with the 1s on are stopping me from doing that. So let's get rid of them. Well, if I delete this one, let me just delete that. If I do that, I need to weigh it out on this side. Otherwise, my scale's not going to be balanced. If I get rid of that, then I need to get rid of one on this side too. Otherwise, my scales are not going to be balanced. And if I get rid of that one there, I need to also do the same there. Now my scales are balanced. But I haven't got an x on its own. I've still got two x's. I've still got two x's. Okay, so how can I sort this out? Well, I can do the following. I can divide it by 2. And if I divide it by 2, I can just put a line right the way through the middle of this. Ooh, not quite like that. Let's draw a nice straight line through. If I divide that by 2, like that, that leaves me with x. 1x, that is 1x, and that after all is what I want, is equal to 6. So one of those x's is equal to 6. Let's just have a look at how that looks in an exam. If you had this in an exam, this is how you need to lay out your working. So, can you remember? The first thing that I did was I took away 3 from both sides. Oops, where's that 15 gone? I took away 3 from both sides. You're getting rid of that 3 from there, but whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. What does that leave you with? It left me with 2x is equal to 12. And then what did I do? I drew that line across because I was dividing by 2. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. Divide by 2 on that side, and you get 6. X is equal to 6. Just a little, another little point as well. Notice how I put all my equal signs in line with each other, okay? And that is something that examiners really, really like. So do try and make sure your equations are nice and in line with each other, and you show what you've done to both sides, like here and here, and here and here. Show what you're doing each time. Example 7. Solve 3x plus 5 is equal to 23. Okay, so I've got my 3x plus 5 on the left-hand side of my scale and 23 on the right. So remember, the objective of solving equations is to get the x on its own. What's getting in the way of me having just a little x on its own? Well, these boxes are getting in the way. So I'm going to get rid of them. So get rid of that one. But remember, whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. Get rid of that. So I need to get rid of that. Get rid of that one. And you can see what's happening here. Okay. So that gets rid of my 5 on the left-hand side, but I now want x on its own. Well, how do I get x on its own? Well, I can't take away an x. I can't just take away one of these x's. Why can't I just take away one? Well, because I haven't got an x to take away from this side. I've only got x's on this side. So I can't just subtract them to leave me with one left like this. I can't do that. I have to do something else because I haven't got any x's on the right-hand side to take away from. So what can I do instead? Well, instead I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So I'm going to do that by drawing a line. So there's one, I've split it into 3 equal groups. So 3 equal groups there, split it into 3 equal groups, and one of these x's here now equals 6. So let's just have a quick look at how you should write that out in an exam. 3x plus 5 is equal to 23. The first thing I did was got rid of the 5. So I subtracted 5. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. That plus 5 and minus 5 cancels out, leaving me with just 3x on the left. And 23 minus 5 on the right-hand side leaves me with 18. And how did I get down to an x on its own? I divided by 3. And whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. And 18 divided by 3 is 6. Okay, let's now speed it up a little bit. So whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. My aim is to get x on its own. So my aim, of course, is to get x on its own. Try, as I say, keep your equal signs in line, like I'm trying to here. What's getting in the way of my x on its own? Well, this is getting in the way a little bit, so I'm going to get rid of that by plussing 6. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So that plus 6 cancels with the minus 6 to leave me with just 7x on this side. And 29 plus 6 is 35. How do I get from 7x down to x? I need to divide by 7. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. And I'm left with x is equal to 5. Example, oh, I missed an example there. Example 9. I'm trying to get x on its own. What's getting in the way of that? The minus 5 is. How do I undo minus 5? I add 5. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So the next line am I working? Well, that's cancelled. So I'm just left with my 9x. 67 plus 5 is 72. How do I get from 9x down to x? I divide by 9. 72 divided by 9 is 8. And as I said earlier on, the best way to check this, because the great thing about equations is you can always check your answer, put your 8 back into here, do 9 times 8, which is 72, take away 5, leaves you 67. So yeah, that's correct. Example 10. Oh, we've got a negative now. Okay, so I want to get x equals at the end. That is my aim. What's getting in the way of that? Well, this is. If I've got positive 9, then I'm going to subtract 9. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So that then leaves me with minus 2x on the left-hand side. That's cancelled. And 1 minus 9, remember you've got to read it that way, 1 minus 9 is minus 8. How do I get from minus 2x down to x? I need to divide by minus 2. And whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I'm going to divide minus 8 by minus 2. And when you're doing a minus divided by a minus, you're going to get a positive answer. So minus 8 divided by minus 2 is positive 4. If you're unsure, check your answer. So put it back in. So that's 4, positive 4. Minus 2 multiplied by positive 4 is minus 8. And then minus 8 plus 9 is 1. Example 10. Okay, my x is in a slightly different position now, but not to worry. So remember, this sign always goes with the number or letter immediately to the right of it. So that minus sign is with that 3x. But remember, my aim is to get x on its own. So what is getting in the way of that? Well, at the moment, this 8 is getting in the way of that. It's a plus 8. How do I know? Well, it's not got a minus in front of it. So I'm going to get rid of it by doing minus 8. Whatever I do to that side, must do to the other. So on the left, that's cancelled. I'm left with minus 3x. Really important you remember that minus sign. Minus 3x is equal to minus 18. How do I get from minus 3x just to x on its own, positive x? I need to divide by minus 3. And I do the same on the other side, divide by minus 3. And minus 18 divided by minus 3 is positive 6. And you can check your answer. So let's go back up to the top here. Let's just get rid of that ink so it doesn't confuse us. Positive 6, put that into here. So 8, take away, well, let's do 3 times 6. 3 times positive 6, that is, positive 3 times 6. So it's 8, take away 18, because that's what 3 times 6 is. Yeah, it leaves you with minus 10. Example 12. I want x on its own. What's getting in the way of that? Well, this is. What's the opposite of minusing 7? Adding 7. Add 7 to this side. I'm left with positive 4x here is equal to 22. And then I'm going to divide by 4 to get x on its own. Divide by 4. Now, of course, you can always get a decimal answer, and that's absolutely fine. If in doubt, you can do it in your head, or you can do a bus stop. 4s into 22. I'm going to put a 0.0. Not the best point in the world, but you get the idea, 22.0. 4s into 2 don't go, but I still have to pay attention to that too. 4s into 22 go 5, remainder 2, and 4s into 20 go 5. 5.5, I'll do it in a different colour there. 5.5. X is equal to 5.5. And again, you can always check your answer by substituting that back into here and seeing if it equals what it should do. Okay, last example. Oh no, straight into an exercise. Okay, so here are some for you to have a go at by yourself. So pause the video now, write out the equations and the working, show that you're balancing the equation on both sides, keep your equal signs nice and in line with each other, and resume the video to see the answers. And here are the answers. Well done for having a go at those.